The personality of Professor Jan de Maer, I would like to say that he is a highly esteemed, well-known intellectual that works at the crossroad of cross-disciplinary sciences and approaches where the level of philosophy and language and culture he advances from the very beginning exploration of what identity brings in. He is a professor of the Université Libre, Bruxelles. He is also one of experts of the scholars which study the Flaminian paintings, and he is deeply interested in the history from Vairāks to the Greek. That is why it's indeed very important for everyone today to hear his presentation, where it goes about cross-disciplinary research and surveys in neuroaesthetics and philosophy, the culture of attribution, of visual arts, which are vital not only in Europe but also define the development of the United States of America and Canada. That is the way how any person can comprehend life in terms of being a citizen and while preserving his or her identity. People face certain challenges while making breakthrough despite differences in the specifics of brain which each of us has, and how we move forward in the times where the emperor's mood wins it all. And these messages which we deliver today speak for themselves, that is to get ourselves back to our citizens, scholars and culture activists. I will not take much time of this presentation, and probably it will not be right from the first time, but probably from the second attempt or further, the way that I did it for myself. Each will have an opportunity to join the understanding what our brain is in terms of modern artistic space. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Apologies, now I have some overlap in my schedule, and I would like Mr. Sergey to stay with you and to help you, my dear friend, Professor de Maer. Thank you. Dear Mr. Minister, thank you very much for your welcoming remarks. Thank you for a wonderful prologue to the understanding of the research that was done by Professor de Maer, and that I would like to extend gratitude to Professor de Maer and to invite him to word. Now, he is a professor of Université Libre, Bruxelles, and he is an honored doctor of the University of Arts and Design in Romania. You're welcome, Professor de Maer.
Thank you. I came the first time in Kiev in 1975. Then as a journalist, I was sent to Moscow, and I traveled extensively to the then Soviet Union. I came back in 96, and I came back in 2012, and since then a few times. And when the Minister Mykola Tochytskyi was ambassador in Brussels, he motivated me to take some interest in Ukraine. And I started with the easiest part, the wine. So I went to Szabo and to some other places to taste the wine. But since at the end I'm a historian, an art historian, and a brain scientist, when then the Crimea was occupied by the Russians, and the story came out by Mr. Putin, and in 2021 he published it. Then Mykola and my old friend, the Duke of Arenberg, asked me, Jan, is there a scientific response to that rhetoric? What can you say about identity in the brain? And I looked it up, and there was basically very little research done in neuroscience. The only thing who was clear that was a special state of consciousness. But to what that special state of consciousness related was very much unclear. So with my colleague in the laboratorium for motor neuroscience at the University in Brussels, Guy Chéron, we started to see a little bit with which brain regions were involved, and we saw that it was quite clear that art and history were elements who were implicated in that physiology that gave us that emotional state of the brain, who is the awareness of ourselves, of our identity, and of our belonging. And since recently President Vladimir Putin has denied the sovereignty of Ukraine, repudiating the distinctiveness of its identity, history, and artistic heritage, this study I undertook, and who is now finished in his first lab, and read by Zeno Kowal, who is born in Ukraine and lives partly in Brussels, and is also a historian of your history. He reformulated a number of elements that we worked out together, and so there's a chapter also in my book that is co-directed by both of us, that I wrote it and he corrected it from an Ukrainian point of view, which as such is important. And the study examines the legitimacy of such a denial propagated under the guise of historiography, who is in fact Russian propaganda, from the point of cognitive neuroscience, which recognizes identity as an inalienable and deeply internal awareness of the self. From a sociological perspective, art constitutes a vital pillar of national cultural consciousness and identity in all cultures. Both artistic creation and historiography share a common neural foundation and a reliance upon credible conceptions of truth. Their validation and an act of critical judgment is initiated by comparable neural mechanisms. And I studied those mechanisms when I did my PhD at the Wellcome Institute in London on connoisseurship and neuroscience, where we scanned the brains with MRI of 24 famous art historians internationally to see how they knew what they saw. I gave to the minister Tochytskyi yesterday the books that I wrote about brain physiology, so from now on they will be in your library too. Masterpiece in particular holds a unique and enduring place within the collective national psyche and historical narrative. Great art possesses an immediate and universal resonance, freely accessible to all. These works reveal group-specific idiosyncrasies within the broader framework of a nation's historical experience. Their authenticity and significance must be affirmed to form an independent peer review. That's why I'm here today because you're all Ukrainians, I'm not. And I submit humbly my work I did during 1.5 years intensively about your awareness of what you are. So it's my view on you that you are free today to correct, to criticize, or to accept. Like historians, connoisseurs draw initially upon a prima vista educated intuition. Yes, men also have intuition. Incidental learning and systematic skepticism, supported by a form of situational intelligence that operates beneath the threshold of consciousness awareness, executed by the brain's ultra-rapid, feed-forward, low-level encoding algorithms responsible for categorization and validation. And you see that as well history, as art, as identity has to be categorized. The limits of those categories has to be firmly determined, and that happens mostly incidentally, and they need to be validated. The cultural identity and historical narrative of a nation are best approached through a multidisciplinary lens encompassing sociological, historical, and art historical inquiry. In the present age, elements of this endeavor are increasingly objectified through technologies such as deep machine learning, data mining, generative artificial intelligence, blockchain, and Web3 technologies. But at the end, sociology, anthropology, philosophy, and a lot of poetry and literature speaks about the self. I organized with Orhan Pamuk and Libre and Imre Kertész about 15 years ago in Sibiu Hermannstadt a colloquium on the self. And we invited all those Nobel Prize winners and other famous writers who wrote in the first person, because that means something. It makes a difference if you tell from the theater of your life, of which you are the prime actor, what your narrative is about yourself. And it will not always be the truth, but it will be what you want to be, what you hope to be, and what you fear that will happen next. And life, by its very nature, generates disorder, a shifting, unpredictable chaos to which human beings endeavor to give meaning. We are machines, our brain is made to propose meanings, a whole wire of meanings for each element that shows up and that is rewarded emotionally by the impact of the emotion it created, and that's how our brain selects between thousands and 10,000s of data, the data who are the most relevant for you. So you're an emotional meaning machine. In doing so, we project our values onto the construction of identity, where it becomes a fragile island of order amidst the tumult of the others, an anchoring point we shall call consciousness. And I worked with my friend Steve Lorrace on limited states of consciousness, those who have interest in near-death experiences and other limited states of consciousness at the CSU in Liège in Belgium. He is one of the most advanced on a world level, Steve Lorrace. And I had the honor to work with him. It's this consciousness that forms the foundation of our self-image, shapes our civilization, and underpins our sense of belonging. As early as the 5th century, during Athens' golden age, thinkers such as Socrates, echoed by Plato in the Symposium, urged us to question our certainties and to cultivate doubt as a pathway to wisdom. So propaganda is propaganda, has nothing to do with thought, has nothing to do with wisdom. Humanity can be aware of its own fallibility, of the inherent imperfection of the human condition, through both mythology and philosophy, the Greeks opened the door to the meta-reflection, a profound inquiry into the self, into identity, and into the destiny. And that's why Greek theater of 1,000 years ago still exists. Mythological figures such as Icarus teach us the perils of hubris, but also the importance of aspiration and the necessity of learning from our failures. The pursuit of the kalos kagatos, the ideal union of the beautiful and the good, represents a perfection that is unattainable in this world. A perfectum, that which is to be completed, reserved for paradise or the realm of the divine. Life thus reveals itself as an initiatory journey, a kind of shamanic voyage akin to that of Odysseus on his way to Ithaca, where the wandering itself becomes a path to transformation. And it's those transformations and the way we live them and through the emotional experiences about it that our state of belonging is a kind of awareness where our nature is modified in to our epigenetic changes by our nurture. And that was already between Darwin and Galton the big discussion, if it was nature or nurture, but it's both. It's nature transformed by nurture. With Prometheus, and in our area with artificial intelligence as his modern counterpart, humankind has begun to liberate itself from the gods, from fate, and from divine authority. So we no longer walk in the shadow of Zeus, but instead forge our own path, guided by the fire of knowledge and technological innovation. It is within the Athenian spirit, lucid, critical, and profoundly humanist, that the roots of our culture lie in our Greco-Christian Enlightenment culture as it was built. It's the bedrock of our modern identity, that of beings who are conscious, fallible, yet ever striving to find meaning amidst chaos. Neuroscience offers insights into the underlying mechanisms of aggression and the denial of identity. Let us, in this essay, embark upon a journey through the annals of human consciousness, where identity is inextricably interwoven with memory, geography, history, and art. And in the grand theater of the mind, examined through the lenses of neuroscience and neuroaesthetics, we encounter the enduring interplay between emotion, self-awareness, and the collective warmth of belonging. We delve into the heart of identity, that intricate amalgam of traits, aspirations, and lived experiences that define a human person as unique. It is a quest guided by the flickering torch of memory, illuminated by our hopes and shadowed by our fears, leading towards a self-discovery and a profound sense of belonging. At its course lies emotion, a tempest that stirs within the soul. In the crucible of the brain, emotions are forged, shaping intellect, guiding reason, and nurturing self-confidence. So it's not a ratio, but a emotion that, in the first place, in an incident way, determines what you are. They are the essence of our humanity, for which identity emerges triumphantly. Identity finds expression in the arts, in the shared culture of people's collective consciousness. Through timeless masterpieces, we glimpse the soul of a nation and the arc of its historical journey. Yet we must remain vigilant, for in the shadows lurks the spectre of propaganda, of falsehoods and fabricated narratives, beliefs that seek to distort truth and subjugate minds. Against this insidious force, we must hold firm, cultivating critical thought and a spirit of intellectual integrity, which propaganda doesn't have. For nearly 4 centuries, the history of Russian imperial and Soviet aggression against Ukraine has sought to suppress the Ukrainian national identity and thwart its people's aspirations for independence. Under President Vladimir Putin, the Russian Federation continued to deny the historical right of Ukrainians to sovereign statehood and even the existence of a distinct Ukrainian identity. Putin's vision, steeped in the ambition to restore Russia to its so-called historic fullness, employs a ruthless strategy of Russification enforced through language prohibitions, artificially induced famine, targeted assassinations, mass deportations, and settler colonisms. And in the last 3 years, they added a whole vocabulary of unknown atrocities to it. This campaign invokes chilling parallels with Stalin's systematic purge of Ukrainian cultural leaders, poets, writers, and artists during the late 20s and 30s, a tragic period now remembered as the executed Renaissance. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine declared its independence in August 1991 and has since functioned as a sovereign state. The roots of Ukrainian cultural self-awareness extend much further back. The Rurikid dynasty was connected through his DNA to his ethnic component, to the Skaldingi, to the lords of the Orkneys and the Shetlands, who initially all that movement came from Denmark, from Jutland to Westfold, and from Westfold higher up in Norway, and from Norway to the northeast of Sweden, where then the Rurikid dynasty started and moved to what's now Poland, and then further to the Black Sea. So you were Europeans before you came to Kiev. Already, because during 4 centuries, those Viking Norsemen were a community, a trade community, who exchanged goods, who had multiple trade routes, and I explored also those elements specifically because my family is descendant from one of those Norsemen families from that time. And the first Christian church built in Scandinavia was, like my name, Maer Church, built on the offer plates of the Vikings in Stierkern, County Trøndelag. So that Christianity that slowly comes in at the end of the 10th century gives a traced register of baptisms and conversions of people, who allows to build timelines and descendant structures for families. The roots of that awareness in the 19th century by Ukrainian intellectuals such as Mykola, Kostomarov, Panteleimon Kulish, and Taras Shevchenko drew the inspiration from the German philosopher John Gottfried Herder, who asserted that each people is the bearer of a unique culture. Subsequently, figures such as Mikhailo Drahomanov, Ivan Franko, and Mikhailo Rusevsky explored Ukraine's historical past already then to affirm its distinct national identity. So it's not an invention recently after 91. There was an awareness, like in many parts of Europe, at the moment of historismus, through the Enlightenment, where we come from and where do we go to. Since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, on the 24th of February 2022, the Russian military has systematically disseminated propaganda, including school textbooks and newspapers, glorifying the Russian Empire throughout the newly occupied territories. This invasion has deliberately targeted Ukraine's national heritage and stolen big parts of that heritage. Hundreds of cultural landmarks have been damaged or destroyed. Museums and galleries, churches and sites of historical significance have fallen victim to this cultural vandalism. Thousands of Ukrainian artifacts and national treasures have been looted and transported to Russia with the complicity of Russian academics and museum curators. In the sanctified memory of a nation, we find both solace and strength, drawing upon the wisdom of bygone generations to navigate the tumult of our present age. Let us heed the lessons of history, lest we be condemned to repeat its errors. Let us advance with dignity, fortified by the twin principles of freedom of expression and the pursuit of truth, as well in arts, as in history, as in our self-awareness. For in the struggle for identity and belonging, it is the brave and the steadfast who shall prevail, their spirit ablaze with the fire of conviction, and their hearts resolute in the timeless quest for liberty. Thank you.
Дякую, пане професоре, за таку актуальну презентацію дослідження, такого важливого в ці часи, яке стосується ідентичності.
Mr. Professor, thank you very much for your enlightening work regarding neurobiology and arts. Now let's move to questions. So those which have questions, please raise your hands. Can you hear me? Head of the Charity Foundation, EDEM. We represent the Ukrainian cluster military defense, and today we brought birth to digital creative cluster, where the education will be provided to teenagers at 15, 17 years. Before 15. Yes, it happens so that their skills disappear, skills to learn. And now the question is about the essence. Following Mr. Spivakovsky's theory, we work with a synopsis of developing a teenager at the age of 15. It's very interesting to dig out what artificial intelligence offers, but what about synopsis? What about the development of a teenager at the age of 15?
The brain of an adolescent is opening in certain sequences with learning capacities who are developing entities specifically at a certain moment for a certain aptitude. So stress and dramatic events, fear and post-traumatic stress syndromes are elements who affect the learning capacity and the assimilation capacity of experience of those young people. I conduct now, since a few months, a program who is also boosted a little bit by our Ministry of Defense to cure, together with the great hospital in Lviv, post-stress syndrome patients who are heavily damaged by it through visual therapies with light and music, through the eye movement analysis. Because what we see when I look at you, is one stable image, but that stable image is made about few 10,000 of blinks in a minute. Each of those blinks has, after the blink, a moment where he is blind. In that blind moment, we see in our RMFI that there is a spike in alpha waves. Alpha waves reorganize your brain computer. Like in sleep, we have the same aspect in sleep. And so we saw that if we treat heavily damaged PTSD patients with that light therapy, that through the alpha waves, the brain is restored and the emotional link between the traumatic fact and his memory is slowly weakened. And that's the only way to recover now, as far as we know, from PTDS in a normal way. So for young people, it's probably early because you only can treat the damage when you are aware it is there. So as soon as you see that there is damage in the acquisition of capacities and qualities through normal learning, one should intervene, not necessarily with that relative complex PTDS syndrome therapy that we developed and that we will work on with 2,300 patients in the clinic in Lviv, but through psychology and medical practices, as is done now already in Ukraine on a sufficient way. And I was involved in another life in Fort Bragg in the same kind of therapies until that stupid Mr. Obama stopped all treatment for army veterans. So it was hard to forgive him for that.
Прошу наступне запитання. Будь ласка. Хвилинку. Почекайте мікрофон.
Thank you for your position and terms for your speaks. Я буду говорити українською.
Today we encountered broad migration of the Ukrainian overseas. This is especially related to the Ukrainian women together with the Ukrainian children. A bulk of this population can remain abroad. The Ukrainian philosophy and anthology have been permanently, by its nature, is a sort of creative force that is based on mutual understanding, love and labor, hard work. Speaking about the current philosophy, it's aimed at acquisition and victory over what's remained in Ukraine. What is your vision in the near 100 years? What will Ukraine, together with Europe and Europe inside of Ukraine, able to do so that we could prevent what happens today in Ukraine now?
It's hard to foresee how this story will end. We can't rely upon America as an ally. Mr. Trump is probably more an ally of Mr. Putin than of us. We can't rely anymore on NATO because the Article 5 will not be actioned immediately if one of the states is aggressed. So what will be the future of this war? Nobody can say. I hope only that since more than 1,000 years, Ukrainian lands has connections in very different ways with Europe, that it will remain connected in its trade routes, in its intellectual life, in its search for truth and freedom of speech and independence of justice to Europe, that's for sure. And those are values for which your people now are fighting. And they're fighting not only for theirs, but also for ours in the West. The whole West is too little aware that what the fight is here on is also about our values and our protection. And I think at the moment the Ukrainian army and the way how they fight is a better protection than everything what Mr. Rutte can say to Mr. Trump at NATO conferences.
Пане професоре, я теж до вас маю запитання. У вступі до вказується, що
in your work, you say that denial of identity is also a political act, and it's sort of a violence act of consciousness. What Russia does today is a violence act of the Ukrainian identity. Can it bring in any consequences for Ukraine? Thank you.
That denial doesn't has really as such consequences as in Ukraine. But since that rhetoric and propaganda of Mr. Putin was widely published all over the West, a number of people said, well, yes, it all belonged to Russia once, and and they are not aware that the war that Russia does on Ukraine is a colonial war, is a war to restore its empire, and it's the end of international law and international treaties. On the other hand, since the 16th century, Russia never respected the treaty at all, so it's not worth talking with them. The only thing is, how can we defeat them? That's the problem. It's only with smashing their head that we become wiser. But until now, it's still a problem to do that, because Mr. Trump will not apply sanctions to his friends who saved him already a few times from bankruptcy in Russia. And the West is luckily standing as much as it can behind you, and I hope that they will stand firm and that the economic situation in Russia will become worse and worse, like it's now going, and that as soon as possible Russia will stop its aggression, because it's the only way to make peace. Ukraine will never give up lands, and we can't expect that. So it's only a Russian defeat that can be a solution. But I hope that comes quickly. Now, a denial of identity is a usual way that also the Nazis and others used to dehumanize their adversaries. I have in my book, in part 2, a chapter on aggression. And I have also a chapter, number 5, on embodied truth, aesthetic emotion, quality validation, and historical insight. And that is the analysis of how in Russia you don't have human sciences anymore, you don't have history anymore, you only have propaganda. And that is, unfortunately, in a number of states like Slovakia, Hungary, and some others, still the case, that they advocate the so-called historical narrative that they inherited from the Russian occupation. Even in Romania, I wrote a book, 2 books on the history of Transylvania, and I had to say to the president of the Romanian Academy, Honorary, that he wrote mythology and I was a historian. But that's the fact, that dehumanizing people, you do it through denying them human qualities. The first human quality is consciousness, and the consciousness of yourself is your identity. In all its links with concentric circles to all the connections you have with all the world around you, with your experiences, your fears and your hopes, and your emotional implication in it. And therefore, it can't be denied. Everybody has an identity, and it's his case of choice. It's not something that responds to a canon. You can make, like the Flemish government, a canon, but that's like a mirror of reference. But it's not something obligatory that you can impose on people.
Пане професоре, одну хвилинку. Хочу задати вам
A minute, please. A practical question. Where can we find your research and when will it be publicized? Thank you.
Я візьму слово. Да, з приводу
From the point of the electronic version or this preliminary version of the book, you can contact Mr. Andrei Zablotsky. You can get contacts at Ukrinform, or Andrei can fetch you these contacts after the meeting directly. Thank you. A question, please. Professor Maer, the question is, in Ukraine, when we speak about the national identity, we speak about the political nation. We speak about identity that is based on values, far not on national characteristics, not on soil. Then how do you associate neuropsychology with the choice of identity? How does neuropsychology relate to representatives of various identities and their own understanding of being together, of their unity? Thank you.
Physiologically, it's already in your DNA. Because the brain is not a blank slate when the child is born. It's already pre-installed a number of determinations and inclinations that work from the first moment when the baby is born. Stan de Haan in Paris, who was the former assistant of my doctor father, Jean-Pierre Changeux, has worked on this a lot. And so there's a genetic part, there's an epigenetic part that is to the most recent modifications before the birth in the parent's life, with a quick inscription 10 times faster than the Darwinian evolution, who make changes in our DNA. And that's why a child who is born at a certain moment and a child is born from the same parents 10 years later can have different inscriptions as well genetically as epigenetically. The second thing is that the very early circumstances of life are also important. First of all, the location. We have in the cerebellum a place map and a position map. And on that place map, it's a grid. You see yourself in a space, in a country, in a countryside, and we all have those incident memories. Not rationally, not something we say, okay, we want. It goes beyond our consciousness. Incident, learning, and integration of what we like. And yet early education with the people around us and the parents are very important in shaping emotion. And that's the emotion linked to those memories come often back at a later age when people have time to think and to look back in life. And therefore there is also that local component. And then later on in their education at school and in their cultural life and in what happens, it's more about their hopes, their fears, and what they believe, that the idea of their position towards those elements will be situated. And from there on, the narrative about the self. What we all know, a number of people who have a fake narrative about their self, because they want to believe, and that others believe what they are not. But at a high degree, hyper-narcissistic persons, such as Mr. Trump and others, have an idea about themselves which is far from reality. And that projection of yourself as a kind of Übermensch towards other people gives you the impression that you're more powerful and that you're allowed to much more than the others. And it's all the mirror towards yourself and the doubt you create, because you only can create intelligence and wisdom through doubt and through the confrontation of your hypothesis with the real situation and an independent peer review. So identity is linked with culture, and that culture is provided by a society. And part of that culture is also politics, and is the canon and framework that in a certain town, in a certain region, people share, and where they will fight for or what they will like or not like. And therefore, the cultural identity of somebody in Lviv and somebody in Kiev or somebody in Odessa will be different. But in many cases, there will be a common stratum, a common awareness of being Ukrainian because you're regressed. And if Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin, who are allies in this, now do us a favor, it's to make us aware. I think all the Ukrainians and all the Europeans are much more aware now what they are than they were some years ago. But it's a gift too little too late, and I hope we have the time to gear up and to end this war as soon as possible. But identity is something that for everybody is different and that have some common aspects in concentric circles of groups of people, and there's a lot of sociological publications on that, and on the concept of values and how they are integrated and constructed into society. But the whole situation, as well politically, as in the family, as your own position in that family and in the nation are important. And the contribution of your country to it is to do that in an open way with free speech and independent justice, so that you can make a reasonable approach about the truth of it, and as well in history as in art. As in life, truth is important. Although there's not one universal truth, everybody has his truth about himself, about his circle, about his surroundings, but those are things that are engraved in our way of being, and nobody can be 100% objective. And that's why when I studied on the demand of the Prince of Arenberg and Mykola Tochytskyi, the case of the Ukrainian identity, I said, well, I have to come before Ukrainian people and to say humbly, okay, this is what I did out of my neuroscience experience and my historical knowledge of the things and the way I approach history after the rules from l'École des Chartes de Paris, who are basic I think, essential rules when you write history, and if you don't obey those rules, well, then you make propaganda.
Пане професоре, дякуємо вам за виступ. Безумовно.
Mr. Professor, thank you very much for your speech. This war made it important for us to understand who we are and the advancement of the Ukrainian culture and identity. We are very grateful for having presented such a scientific foundation for the understanding of identity. Many thanks for your hard work and for your time. Thank you very much to the representatives of the embassy and of the ministry. Thank you and goodbye.
How bad